Well, good afternoon, listeners. You're listening to Lament of Hope podcast, and I am on Zoom today with Rachel York. She's done so many theater productions. She's done Broadway, she's done film, she's done television. I was introduced to her because I was doing some research on Lucille Ball and just was interested in some sort of film about her, and I came across Rachel York's interpretation of it. And I loved the actress. I just thought she had such a flair, and she was very naturally pretty and just very, like, apart from whether or not it was as accurate, because I don't know. I never met Lucille Ball and I don't know much of her story, so I can't speak to that. But I just loved watching her and I was like, I wonder who this person is. And then I started researching her and then I said, I really want to have her on the show and get to know her better. And that ended up being something that could happen. So I was really excited to do that. But she is a singer. She's been on, I have all these like City of Angels, Les Miserables, Scarlet Pimpernel, Head Over Heel. She's been in so many 101 Dalmatians musical, Camelot, and the list just keeps going. Um, so Rachel, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. And that was a really nice thing that you just said. And I'll inform you on that a little bit later. That's really nice.
Well, I wanted to ask you, just to kind of start out, you probably were asked this before, but was it intimidating to play Lucille Ball, or did you kind of just go, I'm just gonna do it based on what I know, but I'm gonna be me at the same time? Or how did you kind of work in that process to play her? Because she's such an iconic role and her kids are still alive, so I would think that would be a little bit of pressure about how to go about doing it.
I'm sure there was, I'm sure I was intimidated in some way. Um, but I think at the time I knew I could play her. And when I sort of set my sights or my passion into a particular character, or I feel I have a particular insight into a character, um, I'm driven to go down there and I guess I realize I can't be afraid, I can't be intimidated, I've got to go for it. And so I kind of, it's sort of the way I approached it. It was interesting because I knew in my heart I could do a really good job, but at the time I thought, oh, surely they're gonna get Deborah Messing or somebody who's very famous to play her. And I went in for the audition, but I still went for it. I did my hair all up, and I actually wore the new look costume from Kiss Me Kate. When I did Kiss Me Kate in London, I had a part of my contract that I would get the outfit that Kate wears. It's a new look. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but in 1949, I actually have the hat up there. It was almost like a very Audrey Hepburn look with the it's kind of tailored top and then the flare out skirt. And so I went in there looking like Lucille Ball. I was very creative because I took my hair. Of course, I don't have short hair and I didn't have that look, so I had to curl my hair and I put it on top of my head to make it look like her. And I went in there, and I have a knack um, for finding people's essence with their voice, you
Hmm.
know, and I hear their voice, and that kind of leads me into them. And so I went there, and I didn't think I was going to get it. And then they called me back, and they called me back again. I'm like, no way. And they called me back again to read with Danny Pino, who they uh, had cast as Desi. And then I had I had a sort of a Zoom call back then. Um, it wasn't Zoom at the time with the director, and I got the role. And I was just really over the moon because I felt like, oh my God, This is it. This is, I would just remember screaming, laughing with my sister. And it was shooting in Auckland, New Zealand. I know that sounds really strange, but that's
Huh.
very exciting to be able to. Now, I didn't get to see a lot of Auckland because I was working like 18 hours a day. I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot. And it was mostly amazing. But
That's a different way of putting it.
it was mostly amazing. The part the part about playing Lucille Ball and the part about going to Auckland and filming it and the whole experience of it, it was very, very hard work. Again, I mean, I was eating, drinking, sleeping Lucille Ball. I had about 3 months to prepare for, no, I didn't even have 3 months. What am I talking about? I had a month. I had a month, the month of December,
Mm.
the holidays. Those are like, and I was just reading and devouring everything I could about Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball was born August 6th. I was born August 7th. So I already
Oh,
felt like a
wow.
camaraderie with her, and I understood a lot about her, and I just really wanted to bring that to it. But it was a very interesting learning lesson because the person negotiating with my agent and everything was just really slick, and I really, really got the short end of the stick in this case, and was paid way less than than Danny, who was in about half of the film, and I was in the whole film. And
Hmm.
anyway, it's not about the money, but it was about the respect. It was about the fact that I had so much work and that I was playing this great, great woman, and they were kind of like, eh, you know, and they didn't even give me like my name, like Lucy, starring Rachel York. They wouldn't even. They were giving me as little as possible. So it was sort of like, wow, why you're hiring me to play this great woman? Why are you treating me like
Yeah.
so much less than that? And 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 then when I got on the set, there were so many decisions that had been made. Now, forgive me for saying this, but everybody in the creative team was a man, and so many things just were incorrect, and it was difficult. Now, Lucy was a perfectionist, so in playing her, that perfectionism was sort of like ignited in me. I have my own perfectionism as well, but in wanting it to be the best that it could be, it was interesting how I was playing the woman on screen, but I had so little control over anything. And
Hmm.
yeah, huh?
Oh no, I was just saying that's so interesting. Yeah.
So interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's just an interesting thing. I mean, like the
Do you know
getting delving.
why? Like,
Hmm?
was it because you were not as famous as someone else that they felt like there wasn't much need to, like they didn't think, for instance, I think, at least from what I've heard, if you're a very well-known actress, right, then you can make demands and be like, this is what I want in the contract, and therefore this must be done or I won't do the movie. And because they
Yes.
really want the person, they're like, yeah, absolutely, whatever you want.
Well, so what's interesting about this whole saga is that um, it's fine. I mean, they did not pay me very much, and that's fine. But I wanted to walk. I told my agents. I said, this is insulting. I don't want to. I'm not going to do this. This is going to be a lot of work, and this is no. I don't want to walk onto the set with my tail between my legs, playing this great woman who had a lot of power and everything. And they said, "Oh, no, no, what, you do it for the art." So that's what I finally
Oh,
decided to do. But later on, I got to know the producer, and I told him the whole thing. He's like, "Oh my God, why didn't you call me?" He said, "We couldn't find anybody to play her. You were it. There was nobody else. We were going to have to ditch the project." the 50th anniversary of I Love Lucy, we're gonna have to ditch it because there was nobody else who could do it. And so it was a lesson. It was a lesson to me because in my heart, I'm like, I want to walk, but the guy who was negotiating this was very, very slick. And he's like, I can give this girl, I almost felt like it was like a game for this guy. I'd never met him. I didn't know him. It's just that I could feel it. And he was like, I'm going to look really good to the studio by giving her like peanuts to play this. Anyway, it's
Mm.
okay. It's all right. The point is, I'm so grateful that I was able to delve into her life and delve into her psyche, and I feel proud that I was able to honor her in the way that she should have been honored. There were things that decisions that were made where I know that she was turning over in her grave, and I'm like, and I was going to the mattresses for her, but there were just some things I couldn't control that were, and I would go like, oh, sorry, that those were already made. Those decisions were made 2 months ago. We can't do anything about it now. And I'm like, but you're kidding me, you know. Um,
Oh,
and so it was a really interesting situation. And as I'm talking about it now, this is so interesting. Uh, there have been some projects, not all projects. I mean, I'm very grateful for my career, and I've had wonderful, wonderful experiences. Um, but there are some things that in my career where I feel like I have so much passion, and I know what needs to be done, and you don't have the control to do anything about it.
mm.
But so I started writing. One of the things that what it kind of related in that same kind of arena is that I did Camelot years ago, and I had talked to the director previously, and we had talked about updating it and making it like fresh and new, and making King Arthur young and vital and undefeated warrior, which is who he was as a warrior in all of the legends. In any legend that you read, he was a brute. And for so many years, people have misunderstood who King Arthur is. They've made him this bookish, you know, little nerdy kind of guy. And he was an undefeated warrior. There was nobody better than him, but maybe Lancelot was just a little bit better. And people keep making him the philosopher. But King Arthur was not the philosopher. King Arthur was a warrior. Merlin, the druid priest that was his mentor, was the philosopher. He
Mm.
was the wise one who tried to impart to him to think, instead of being this crazy, like, I'm going to kill, you know, before you do that, maybe just think about it. What is what's going to happen if you do that? And, and so later on in Camelot, he's like, Merlin always taught me to think. He always taught me to think. So you have a man, and it's a beautiful, how can I say, the way King Arthur is written, it's all there, is what I'm saying, in the original script.
Yeah.
He's trying to he's really, it's like being in a relationship with a man who has these instincts, but he's like really, really trying to do the right thing, but he just keeps messing up. And he's trying to think, he's trying to do the right thing. And that's why when Guinevere and Lance sort of cheat on him, it brings out the I will have vengeance. And
Yeah.
find that he has to find his heart. He has to find his mercy, and he has to find that wisdom that Merlin imparted to him. And so anyway, that's I'm actually been I've been writing. I rewrote Camelot, and so I'm hoping to get that out there because
And
they're
you rewrote it to be more historically accurate.
more
More,
historically
yeah.
accurate. The characters are more fleshed out. The characters make sense, and it's like, Morgaine is not a witch in the woods that eats children. She's the high priestess of Avalon. She's a wise woman. She's an oracle, So I mean, there's just, and then it's like Aaron Sorkin did it, and he said, we've taken all the magic out of Camelot. Like, oh, that's a recipe for success. So anyway, you know, it's I have a great deal of passion and detail in my insight, and so I wanted to bring that to Camelot. And I mean, it's a whole new vision and a whole reimagining. So it'll be um, that's something I want to put out there because I think the story of Camelot is it's very timely to today,
Hmm.
and it's one of those musicals. And it's one of those stories, really, that people are it's always beloved. Like people are like, oh, Camelot, Camelot. But then they go see a production, they're like, oh, every time. So because there's gold in it. There's gold in it, but there's a lot of things that are outdated. People don't quite understand the characters for some reason because I think they weren't completely finished. It was done in the 1960s when, they couldn't talk about uh, pregnancy. I mean, it was like, have you noticed that Guinevere never has an heir? Like, does
Right.
anybody think about that?
Yeah.
There's so many details that were probably left out because of the times, because it was the 60s, but also there was theater has evolved since then a great deal. And the characters, the way it's kind of written, they're a little bit wooden. They're a little bit, when they walk on and they walk off. There's not a lot of choreography. There's not a lot of movement,
Oh, I
and
see. Okay, yeah.
so it's like it has the opportunity to become like really magical and really really beautiful. And so I'm hoping I will attract the right people to make it happen because I do think that people innately love that story, but they're always just sort of like, oh, you know, it's just, oh, it's something that it doesn't, it's not able to ring the bell. And it's just, and I know what it is. I know what needs to be done. Anyway,
Well, I mean,
sometimes it happens.
but I do think people love, I think that's because, it's interesting. I've recently started reading, fantasy, and it was never my favorite growing up. I kind of gravitated more toward like historical fiction. I liked that better, but I had a friend who said, "You really should try fantasy. I think you'd really like it." And so I was like, "Oh, okay." And then she recommended this author to me, and I started reading it. And the way that the author had written the fantasy was that it was so believable. It was based on something that was a fantasy, an old tale, and there was a magical element to it. But the characters were so real that I cried when I was
Oh,
reading it because I felt like, yeah, I understand how she's feeling. Like, there wasn't this huge separation between me and the character, like, totally. I think you're right in some things that, sometimes there's a character in a fantasy world, right, that's like just so one or the other extreme that you don't really fit in. You're just like, oh, that's an interesting, or that's a fun movie or whatever, but I didn't relate to anything, so I quickly kind of forget about it. But there is something so beautiful when you can take that genre and then you make a character in it who the world may be less believable, but because the character is more believable, you forget about that. And it just feels like, yeah, no, I really resonate with that character. It doesn't matter what world this is. I get it. Like, even if the world is unbelievable, the character's believable. Therefore, the world can become more close at hand to me. And I think, kind of like what you're saying with Camelot, I think there are, people crave to see something human that they can understand. That's why people, when we watch movies and stuff, yeah, it's entertaining. But people, I think, really do are drawn to something that's really human and that they can relate to. And that really makes a good story. And so I think what you're saying about Camelot is you kind of want to take away, you want it to become more relatable to people, more human. Like people are watching it and they're like, I can understand that character. Because I've definitely seen plays where it's like you're watching it and you're like, these just feel like puppeteers or something. Like, yeah,
Right.
I get the story, don't understand, like, I get it in my head, but my heart's like responding to nothing happening here. So, like, all the
Mhm.
characters could even die, and you're just like, well, that's interesting. Like, you don't feel anything, You're just kind of like,
Funny.
yeah.
I
So,
I
I
was
think that's
watching
really
something the other
great.
day. Oh, sorry, I was watching something the other day on TV with these great actors, and I'm like, every single person in this is depraved, and it's like I don't care about any of these people. Why would I want to watch this? I
Yeah.
don't. None of these people have any redeeming human qualities, But yeah, it's everything is there. It's all it's. This is a very interesting time where it's just there's a lot in the mix, and there's sometimes I feel like there's confusion between what is art and what is just bad.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I was gonna ask you in talking about Lucy. Was what was one thing in particular that you really wish was done differently that you could have, because you said you fought a lot to be more like her.
There are a lot of little nitpicky things like it's just funny. It's very interesting. The director had met Lucille Ball when she was um, well after I Love Lucy. So she was what probably in her 60s or something. He didn't meet her. I'm sorry. He saw her. He saw her in a show, and he remembered the color of her hair. Now, do you know how many men are colorblind? Okay, but anyway, forget put that aside. He remembered the color of her hair from 30, 40 years ago, whatever it was, right? And it was this canary red. Well, the color of her hair when she was in her 60s was very different from the color of her hair when she was on I Love Lucy. And if anybody knows anything about redheads, you know that red fades if you color it, and she was not a natural redhead. So, and if you watch I Love Lucy, in black and white, it comes across as if she is almost blonde.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, it does.
She looks a little bit like she has light hair, and Desi has dark hair. And when we did the black and white stuff, both of us looked like we had the same color hair almost.
Oh, okay.
And it was just these are little nitpicky things. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, what? That doesn't, things like that. I had to fight. I mean, I had an Australian makeup artist who had worked on Braveheart. I remember that was his big thing. I don't know why they thought he was perfect for 1930s makeup, but I had to. He was one of those people. It was just like a naysayer. So you say, hey, could we do this? And you go, no, no, I don't think we can do that. Yeah, well, why not? Blah, blah, blah. No, it's just too hard. It's too hard. Whatever. So one day I come to work and I have her the style of her wig, the length of her hair before she did I Love Lucy. And he says, we're not going to be able to do the ponytail. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? You can't do the iconic ponytail that everybody knows as I Love Lucy? He's like, no. Why? You know, are you kidding me? And he says, well, because the wig's too short. And if you put it in a ponytail, it just looks like a little nub. And like,
So there doesn't seem to be a lot of
right,
flexibility or
right, right, right. No,
creativity.
no.
It's just
Right.
very
So I say,
like,
well, well, was this the length of her hair at the time? He said, yeah. I said, well, it was a banana clip. Go get a banana clip at the store. It goes like this. And then probably she had her hair like this. This is the makeup artist and hair man. I'm telling him. I mean, you accept a job and you don't even know how to do her iconic look. You're going to put me out there and I'm going to have my hair look like this or something, for I Love Lucy. Are you kidding me? You know, it was just these kinds of things I was dealing with. I'm like, is there a camera? Is this a candid camera? What's going on here? And I said, get the banana clip. I'm sure that's what it is. 2 weeks later, we're there. And I said, did you get the banana clip? We're going to be shooting the scene. He said, no. I said, I'm not doing the scene. You better go get the banana clip. I'm not going to do this. I mean, it was unbelievable. And of course, he did it. And it turned out, and it looked just like her. It was the banana clip. Like he couldn't figure that out.
maybe you should have come in with blue streaks across your face and just been like, so, I've just been thinking and I feel like Lucy was just a brave person and I'm gonna just do this
Right.
makeup. No, 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 you can't. She doesn't look that way. Well, I can't take it off. It's stuck. I put it on and it takes days to come off, so I'm just not gonna remove it.
Yeah, right.
See, that's my mean side coming out because that's when that's what I when I sometimes when I face people like that, I'm just like, I'll just do the same thing back to you, and then we'll see if you like that. Like,
Yeah.
do you see the that is so frustrating. I'm so sorry. But then
Oh
what's
no,
so
no.
interesting though is
Listen.
that I mean, I know, but despite all of that, you glowed through the film. You did a great job.
So what was really, really nice about what you said, and so you know, uh, long, short story, long story, no, to tie it up is in conclusion is what I want to say. In conclusion, what you said was so lovely because I remember after seeing when we finally watched the movie, in my head I had this whole I had, oh, it can be this and it can be that. I also did a lot of research and I found out that um, she had rheumatoid arthritis. Like she was bedridden for a year. And in this one story that I read, and it was eating these strawberry. Sorry, it was she called her grandfather. It was during the Depression, and they were living off these strawberries in their backyard. And it was that made her be like, I have to do something. I have to save them. I have to. I'm getting out of bed. I'm going to make this happen. And somehow she used mind over matter and went for it. She was a model at the time, and I just remember reading this. And I'm like, oh my God, why isn't this? Why isn't this in the movie? Nobody's ever talked about this. It was a short period of time. Like it was maybe even a little bit less than a year. Maybe they called it rheumatism at the time, and maybe it was because she was depressed. Maybe it had a psychological thing. Who knows? But the point is, she was kind of bedridden for a time, and with pain, with like a rheumatoid type of uh, disease or something. And uh, after this phone call, she was like, "I got to take care of my family," and that
Hmm.
was in my research. That was her ultimate goal, was to create stability for herself and her family. That was her driving force. And anyway, back to the conclusion. It was really nice for you to say that because when I saw the final product, I thought it was very good, but I was sort of like, oh, it's a TV movie. And at the time, TV movies were different back then. They were a very certain, they were like you had film
Right.
and
Yes.
you had sort of TV movies, and they were just a little more. They were just real commercial and formulaic and nothing really interesting. Nothing, it was like, oh, boy meets girl, they fall in love, and then yeah. Um, and so I saw it. I was like, oh, oh. I also noticed that something else that happened um, is that the film crew cinematographer decided that to shoot this side of my face instead of this, or this side of my face instead of this side of my face. And these are like really nitpicky little things. But if you're trying to make somebody look as much like this person as possible, and my face is not at all like hers. I have a very long face, and she had a very, petite little heart-shaped face. And they shot me from the long side of my face instead of the shorter side of my face. And so I noticed after a while, like, why do you keep shooting me on this side? It's like, oh, because this one looks more like Lucy. I'm like, no, it doesn't. And I was able to, for the photographs, for the publicity shots, I was able to change it and make them film me from another angle. But I remember seeing certain things, and I'm like, why did you film it from that angle? Why did you do that? It's like when they shot the uh, the grape crushing scene.
Yeah.
The original grape crushing scene was sort of shot just sort of like almost like midway, like just like looking straight at the face kind of thing, and down. And they shot it way up here, and it was just so odd. Just that some of the choices that they made, I feel like so many of the people that were working on this film had no idea who Lucille Ball was, and they didn't do any of their research. And it was just really frustrating. Because I had no control whatsoever. But also, it was nice because I felt like, oh, all these fans of hers, the person who's going to get blamed for the things that are wrong are probably the actress that's playing them. She came across like this, or she didn't look like this, or she didn't look like Lucy, or she didn't. It's like, not without trying. Um, but what you said gave me peace of mind, which is what I had hoped, that like I put my heart and my soul into that, and I wanted to honor her. And so I have to trust that it touched some people. You know what I mean? That it got through and that people were affected by it. And that's all that I can do. And so that was meaningful to me, that you said that.
No, yeah, no. I mean, because I think the thing about Lucille Ball, and I think what people love about her, yes, she was very funny, but she just had a presence on the screen that you liked. Like, you couldn't really place it exactly. I mean, yes, she was pretty, but she had some sort of pizzazz that, you know, a lot of people don't have that are on TV. I mean, it doesn't mean they're bad people or anything, but there's just something very special about someone when the camera looks at them and they like stand out and you're watching them and it's pleasant to watch them. I don't know how to really explain it, but that was for me, yeah. I mean, I Lucy had that and you had that. So I thought, okay, even if everything isn't exactly the same way as how Lucy would have done it, you captured the essence of Lucy because when you watch Lucy, you like to watch her,
That's
whatever
nice.
she's doing. And so I think that passion you had came through because that's what you were, trying to do.
That's
Um,
Thank you.
but it's interesting because you're mentioning this powerlessness that you felt in this film. Afterwards, like, have you enjoyed theater more? Do you feel like you had more control over the characters in theater than you did when you were on TV or in a film?
Well, I just learned that uh, no, I love the film genre as well. I really do. There's something wonderful about getting the right take, doing it enough, even though we really only had like two or three takes, I think. But No, I mean, I really loved playing her. I loved the whole genre of film and TV. Um, but you do have more control over the end product, of course, when it's live, when it's stage. And that is something that I learned to really appreciate that I maybe took for granted before.
What do you, which of your projects do you think you're most proud of? Because I mean, when I was reading all the musicals you've done, oh my gosh, so many. And like you, that you had originated the role for 101 Dalmatians, the Cruella de Vil character for the musical that was on stage. Um,
I had a wonderful time doing Victor Victoria with Julie Andrews. Um, it was a magical time because uh, I became very good friends with both Julie and Blake. Blake directed it, Blake Edwards, who did the Pink Panther movies and Breakfast at Tiffany's and so many other great films. Days of Wine and Roses. And we just, um, it was just playtime with him. Like on stage, we worked really, really well together. And he let me kind of play, and then he'd say, "Yeah, do that," And um, I remember at the end of I have an exit line, and I felt like, Blake, my exit line. It's just, I gotta have the last word. Norma has to have the last word. And so he came up with, my mother was a nun. And it was just, it was just joy. It was just bliss, working with him and Julie. And, playing that character it was a real learning curve for me, and so exciting. And it was one of those experiences where you're on stage and it's a comedic character, and there's a kind of feeling where you just have that audience in your hand, and you could blink and they'll laugh, or you could,
yeah.
you know, turn your head and they'll laugh, or do nothing and they'll laugh. So it's a wonderful gift to experience that, on stage, to have all of these people. It's like you're communicating with whatever it is, 1,500 people, 2,000 people in the audience, and they're all with your every move. They're like,
Mhm.
you know. So that was really cool. I remember that. Yeah. I've been lucky to play. I used to always say that the part would find me, when I was in a place in my life where certain things were happening, and maybe I wanted to express something that was, in my psyche at the time. Uh, Sometimes that's when the role would come along, and I got to flex my muscles, and really enjoyed it. I loved playing. Cruella de Vil was a lot of fun because I used to do an impersonation of her when I was a kid, and it's what's so interesting is I had this memory of the movie, the cartoon, the original animated movie. And when I later on I created the character, and then later on I went and I watched the original Cruella in that animated movie, and I realized, oh, I really like what I did better. Like, I thought I was almost doing what she did, but it was my memory of what she had done. And so my mind somehow embellished certain things that original animated character did. And so it was really, really interesting how, as as a kid and doing my impersonation, it became its own thing. And so I really enjoyed that because I can be very animated. I'm a very animated person. I enjoy doing. I just did a voiceover demo recently, and I just love doing all these different voices. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm, talking to animals, and I give them their own voices, and um, it's just fun for me. I'm silly like that.
What do
Here's my
you,
dog's at my feet.
I was gonna say when you were talking about different roles that have kind of been cathartic because you were able to like express something going on in your life. Is
Mm,
there one in particular that you think was,
like all of them. Yeah, I mean, I would say this is more true of the theater roles that I've gotten.
yeah.
I mean, yes, Lucy, of course. Um, a lot of the episodic stuff that I've done, or that wasn't quite the same, but yeah, every single one of them, pretty much, every single one of them had something that was being expressed, that was very deep in my soul. Reno Sweeney, I just got her. I knew who I mean, and I know there's many different interpretations of Reno Sweeney, but I knew what mine was. and and it was sort of based on the great dames of that era. There was a certain way that they talked, and hey, how you doing? uh, um, and I grew up watching old movies, so I loved being able to create a character like that from that time period, because and those are things that like bother me, when something's not authentic to the period, because in every period there's the way they spoke, the way they communicated was a sign of the times, just like the way they dressed, you know. So all these details matter. Um, so when you see, somebody doing like a period piece and they're like, "Oh, hi, how are you doing?" Unless it's a comedy, of course. If it's a comedy, that's okay. But when it's sort of a more serious piece that should be authentic to that kind of a thing. Um, you know, I just feel like Reno Sweeney should have the swagger. She's like walking in there, "Hey guys, how you doing?" um but that's my interpretation of it. And oh, I played Dessa Rose. I did a thing with LaChance. Was a musical as well. um it was Aaron's and Flaherty. Beautiful music. And I remember before I got the role, I kept saying, I want to play a salt of the earth character, because I've,
Hmm.
I've been playing so many glamorous women, and, sort of outspoken. And I was like, I want to play like just uh, a simple woman who's just trying to make it, and then that's when Ruth came along. And um, it was, I don't know if you know the story, but it was a post Civil War story about this woman who's abandoned by her husband,
Hmm.
and all of these slaves are living on her property. And she was like afraid because they were, a bunch of black people. And this was at the time. And, but in understanding her ignorance, she was just like, she grew up very coddled in this world. And but the only anchor that she had in understanding these people, you know quote unquote, was she had a mammy. She had mammy who raised her. And she learns later on, because Dessa Rose says, "You didn't even know the name of your mammy." And she's like, "Oh, I didn't know the name of my mammy. She was just my mammy." So it's just, it was so beautiful to go into this woman who's really, you know, dealing with her own feelings of powerlessness, and
Hmm.
trying to use that power that she was brought up with, that sort of superiority over. Oh, she was trying. I love it. I just love it. Trying to be. understand these people, right? Right.
Yeah, yeah,
But then like when she feels embarrassed or a fool, she has to be like, well, you're just a bunch of slaves. That's what you are, So it's so interesting, finding the thought pattern and her dealing with her own issues of ego and psyche and but then and her ignorance,
yeah.
which she doesn't even know she's ignorant. And then just I just love stories of people who kind of become enlightened and are like, oh, oh, I know, I get it, and then
Yeah.
and then she starts, working with them and protecting them and um, helping them to become free, you know, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful story.
Well,
And those are,
I love your grace for her because I think a lot of obviously there's a lot of things in history that were bad and hard and not something that when you look back on you're proud of, right? So the Civil War, having slaves, um, it's a part of American history that we don't like. And it makes sense we don't like it because it's not right, right? There were people in captivity who were just the same as white people. There was no difference. But all that to say is, though, is I love how you have a grace for your character because in the time, they wouldn't have understood or seen it the way we do now in the 21st century. We're like looking at it from back and we have all this perspective. But that was their life and that's all they'd known then. And so the fact that, you're playing this woman who had slaves, I feel like for some actors, there'd be so much hostility toward their character that they couldn't wait until their character changed, right, and became different and got it. But you have to have this grace and love for your character in that what if you were that person though in that time and you didn't have the perspective of now? You wouldn't know any better, right? There wouldn't be a difference. It's all you'd known in your entire life. And then these new ideas of the fact that, a slave is actually your equal and that, you know, like all of those things were new ideas and different for people then. And so there has to be this grace and understanding for that when you're playing that role. And I think it's interesting how you said like yeah, she comes to this enlightenment period to understand, but at the same time, you see her struggle, that she's trying to
Mhm.
understand. She's trying to, but she's also part of a cultural, that's her culture. Her husband's left. She's always lived this way. They never called their slaves by their names, in the sense of when you were talking about her mammy, like she didn't ever bother to ask her name because they didn't, like they just wouldn't have asked. And so I, f- I really think that's important to have grace for your character because then you can really show that when you're acting the character
Mhm.
out.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I mean, and throughout history, there might be, our ego in a certain group of people might have a very, their egos working in a certain way, and they develop a, what the laws and the rules are. You think about the Puritans and how they came to have religious freedom, and then all they wanted to do was tell everybody else they're the devil. So I mean it's just there's so much projection, there's so much, it's very interesting. It's why I wanted to be an actress, because there's so much psychology to unravel in every character that you play, and that's what's so interesting to me. um, and history. I mean, you a lot of things that we presume about history, we don't always know all of that, because we do know that history was written by the winners, right? Um, but it's even deeper than that, because in all of history there have been sort of the evil people, right? Okay, you quote unquote evil people that have done really bad things, but there have also been people trapped in that group that are more sensitive, and that feeling of helplessness must must have been terrible. I think of like the Holocaust, and I think of people being in a place where they can't speak out, and but yet
Yeah.
they've got to protect their family, but yet, oh my God, and people people were heroes. People still, people knew they're, and I have a great, I have a great belief in humanity. I think that, we a lot of times we're corrupted. We believe in the corruption. Right now, I guess it's just I say right now, but I think it's happened throughout history. How we devalue um, art, we devalue the feminine, we devalue um, understanding and love um, and grace and generosity, and put all of the value on money and material things, which is so backwards, really, because those things are never going to last, and you're going to leave this world without them. Um, and so, if you don't develop what's real and what is truly valuable, you end up being a very empty human being who's very afraid in the end of life because they think that there's just total darkness, there's nothing there. Whereas if you develop your soul and you really see what the value of this world is, um, it's a I really do believe in, like, those, talk about the heaven and hell. It's not when you leave this earth. It's right here. Heaven and hell is right here in the world that we live in right now. And we can kind of choose to live in hell, or we can choose to live in heaven. And there are so many different worlds in between that we can live in as well. And it's about expansion. It's about growth. And uh, there's so much out there in the world, and it's not just black and white. It's not simple like that. And when you delve into it, I could use the analogy of playing a character. I got cast as this character of this to play this person, and like, oh, I'm gonna be so cool playing this character. And I mean, and if you think of it on a very, surface, um you know, just completely on the surface, artificial, um, black and white type of a thing, it's not going to be very fulfilling for you or the audience. But when you delve into this stuff and really bring it out of your own soul, it can be incredibly uh, moving for people. Now, I want to say, one of my best friends, years and years ago, she did she did this play, and it was something that it's called Presence. Um,
Hmm.
and when I saw her in this play, I understood it. She did Top Girls. This play, it was an off-Broadway production of Top Girls, and oh gosh, what's the character that she played? Starts with a G. They all played two characters, but she played. There's the second half of it is about her and her sister, and she's the older sister. And I just remember watching her and her heart, and she got this in her reviews. Um, there was something like you just cared so much for her. Like, she just put her presence out there, her heart out there. And it was so evident. It was like I was watching all of these wonderful actresses. They were all really, really talented. And I was like, oh wow, no, she's very good. She's very skilled. No, she's very good. She's very good. But I was just like, something, and it wasn't biased. It wasn't about being biased because she was my friend. It was she brought something, like, from the depth of her soul to that character. And you everybody was tuned in, was watching it.
Hmm.
And um and that's kind of what we need to do in life too, I think. I mean, you can live on the surface, you can be, worry about all these artificial things, or you can, really delve deep and bring out something really meaningful and artistic. And I think we're all meant to do that, whether you're an actor or a garbage collector. I mean, honestly, I think I really believe in that. You have to have there. I've noticed there are two different types of people, and the second type of person is really doing themselves a disservice. There are those people that will go the extra mile. There are those people, and I learned this from my mother-in-law was in hospice at one point, so she was living in our apartment. And I remember we would have nurses coming through all the time, and they would, be there all the time. And I'm taking care of a 3-year-old child, and I'm, taking out the trash, and I'm, doing all this stuff. And I remember seeing some nurses, they would see me, I was struggling with the trash or I was struggling with something falling or whatever. And they'd be like, oh, let me help you with that. Let me help you with that. Do you need anything else or whatever? And then I see other ones that were like, while I'm struggling, trying to, maybe pick something up or do something, they're sitting there on their phone going, so I hear you're an actress. What's that like? And you're just like, oh, great. It's fine. Uh, it's just, it is important for us to be present in this life, not just present on stage, but present. I think that acting is sort of the microscope of uh, the big picture. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, I mean, what if we do just play? What is it? All the world's a stage, and all the world's a stage, and all
The men and
the
women
and all the
players.
men and
Yeah.
women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and I kind of think that's life. That's what our existence is, and so and sometimes I think a lot of people who are choose to be actors in this lifetime, I think they're doing another version of the big picture, and the point is to be present and to see things deeper and to really relish and taste that cake. you know don't just gobble it up and go, oh, that was good. Eh, and in this culture that we have right now with social media, immediate gratification, I don't have the time. And I've and it's so much, of course, it's just been, I think about, women being so concerned about their looks and how they're perfect and do they have the perfect lips and they have to, and I'm like, oh, and I see my daughter doing the same thing that I did when I was her age, of course. And I hear my mother trying to tell me the same thing I'm trying to tell her. And um, we can't get tangled up in negativity and all of that stuff that really we put so much value on, but really is meaningless in the end. It is about our heart and our soul and about um, painting that picture with your heart, creating whatever it is you're creating with your heart. You know, uh, taking that trash out to help make the world a more beautiful place. And really having having pride in your work and wanting to make the world a better place in your own way, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
Um, but somebody who sits there on their phone when somebody else is in need or going the extra mile to get it done right, to get it to do something meaningful. Um, it's just so much more rewarding than like, you know what? I'm only paid to work for 5 hours, or that's not in my job description, so I'm not going to lift a finger. Sorry. It's just that that's just a mentality I'm trying to
Yeah.
express.
Well,
Um,
I was gonna ask you, because what you're saying, this idea of like the centric idea of the soul and going below the surface and the meaning of life and being able to connect with people and to be vulnerable and how that just connects with you so deeply. And that's something where you're like, that's humanity when you interact with it. Do you, I know you were mentioning like heaven and hell on earth and the importance of like, what are you going to take with you? Do you have, like is there some spiritual compass or is there some moral code or like what do you
well,
believe will happen to you? Like
yeah,
what is your
this
worldview?
you're talking about my. This is what I love to talk about. See, it's so funny. Um, it always ends up in this conversation. Um, yes. Well, I am non-denominational, and the reason is I started like a spiritual quest when I was 14. I had this dream where I was this young girl in an alley, sitting with my little sister. Didn't look like myself. I had dark hair, long dark hair, and I saw these four Gestapo men walk by and go into a tavern. And I went into the tavern, and the song "Roll Out the Barrel" was playing, and everybody was drinking. And then suddenly, I heard these chairs, and I was going to get my grandfather because I knew I needed to get him out of the tavern because those men were going in there. And these men got up on the one of the guys got on the stage and had everybody hail Hitler. And and then the next minute it switched, and I was running with my grandfather and my little sister through this parking lot, and and that was it. And I had this dream. It was so vivid, and it was like, oh my god! And it was me. I knew it was me in the dream, but it wasn't me. It wasn't me.
Yeah.
And, and I at the time I was really into dream analysis, and I was like, well, what did the tables and the candles in the tavern mean, and what is it supposed to mean? I wasn't looking at it like a past life dream. I was just like, oh, what? And then it occurred to me that the parking lot that we were running through was the parking lot I had been to my first funeral 6 months earlier, and it was that parking lot, but with old fashioned cars in it and everything. And I have dreams all the time about other lifetimes. So, people can go, oh, that's, a bunch of bull or whatever. That's fine. I don't care. But the thing is, more, it's not just, we're not, you can live on the surface or you can go a little bit deeper. And it's very easy for people to say, oh, well, this is it. This is it. It's just like, science tells us boom, 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 and that's what it is. And or religion tells me this, blah, 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 blah. But there's truth in every single thing. And I do, like, a scientist is an artist. Everybody has their own art form.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
um, but I do believe in past lives, and I do believe that we are here um, to release past trauma, to and to remember um, that love really is um, everything. I mean, I think it's when we keep trying to put a face to love. What is God, or what is love, or what have I mean? It really is. We're going to find that science and spirituality or religion or what have you, Winnie, it's all going to come together and all make sense, because it's an energy. It's an energy of love, of beautiful, blissful love that we try to put you know, a patriarchal, form on it, or, um, put another kind of form on it, or it's not, it's formless. It's formless, and we don't understand that because this is a material plane. This is I always research all this stuff, and what I've learned recently is that the ego mind is actually just an interpreter. So the ego mind isn't bad. It's not bad because the ego mind helps us to interpret um, this material uh, existence, this material plane, right? It's like this is a computer. It's hard. It's what keeps us from jumping out the window and trying to fly, or it's what makes us put a coat on when it's cold. It interprets this. Oh, that's what this is. But we think that that's the ego thinks that that's all that there is. It's just this. But there's something that fuels the whole system. It's like, you have your suit. It's like for robots, and like we have there's this spirit, this juice, this um the spirit fuels this robot, and it fuels the brain as well. The brain is the mechanical function that makes everything work and everything, but you have to have the golden juice or whatever you want, the spirit
Yeah.
to make it work, the soul, to make it function, and so the ego is what interprets, class. and But when the ego gets out of balance and says, I I control, I do everything, and you can only see it from the ego's point of view. And if you lose touch with your spirit, which we are really both. And if you look at the mind, we have the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. Even
Yeah.
in science, we know this. There's this wonderful. I was listening to Oprah the other day, and this doctor, I don't know what her name was, but she's some kind of neuro uh, scientist or neurosurgeon, and she had a stroke and lost the. Um, it affected her left hemisphere, and she talked about how what she learned from all of this is going to pave the way for new information about understanding autism, about understanding people with Down syndrome, about understanding people with um, dementia or what have you. Um, because what's happening, because when she said that, when she couldn't remember that person's name, or she couldn't communicate, she was absolutely present, and she felt really wonderful. Like, she talked about the feeling that she felt, which again, I think that's the golden juice, or that's the spirit that fuels us. And we kind of shut it off. We've gotten to a point where we completely shut off, the ego completely shuts off this other part of us.
Mm.
And that,
Yeah.
to the point where in our existence, I mean, throughout history, we've completely suppressed the feminine. The feminine has to do with um, it's art, it's uh, kindness, it's nurturing, it's all the feminine aspects, and then we need both of them. It's not to both the masculine and the feminine are very important. But if you look at it, we live on this plane of duality. So you have the feminine and the masculine, or you have black and white. It's always there's always going to be duality on this plane.
Hmm.
And when you completely suppress one side, the yin and the yang, the yin doesn't mean anything, the yang is in power. The yang, it's you lose so much because you need that balance. And that's why, you know
Yeah.
Buddhists and other Eastern philosophies talk about balance, because you have to have that balance. And we are here on this plane to do what we're meant to do, but there has to be a balance. And um we've completely put all of our eggs into the material basket. It's all money and career and striving um, and we've completely there are some elements in different religions that do talk about generosity um, and whether you believe in Jesus or Gandhi or Buddha or what have you, but they all kind of say similar things. One of them, the most important thing that they say in like all of these different philosophies is love your neighbor in one way or another. Love your neighbor. Um, do unto your neighbor as you would have them do unto you. And that's something that we forget. We forget because we think, oh, it's about money. It's about protecting my own. And that's the ego. That's the ego taking over. And, negativity, um, we become consumed with negativity and control. And all of those words are a very egotistical point of view. I was just in Hawaii, and Hawaii is so filled with the feminine. You just walk off, you walk off the ship, the boat, or whatever, and they call it breathing in mana. And believe in the language is so feminine. It's very gentle, and you feel like you're just being embraced by a motherly hug when you're in Hawaii.
Hmm.
And I think about what happened to the Hawaiians and to the Native Americans and how they were just kind of obliterated and just completely suppressed. And there's still a lot of resentment that they have towards the white man that just came in and took all of their gold. And what's the worst thing about it is that they converted all of them, took everything from them, and beat out their own culture, which had so much gold and so much truth in it, and replaced it with Christianity. Now, there's nothing wrong with Christianity, but it's just that Christianity has been corrupted over the years and has been used for power. I don't think anybody can deny that. And many, when anything exists that can be make you powerful, every single con artist is right there.
Right.
It's all there. It's all there in history, and so I just hope that they and so many Native Americans find their original voice. They can still use the teachings of Jesus to help them, but so much of it I think is so confusing. They brought that and they took away their culture, beat it out of them, and then they confused them. They're like, here, this is the truth, and they're like, what? Uh, and anyway, and I'm going off on a tangent, but anyway, there's so much I've been learning about the world and the spirit, and I'm hoping that um, we start to listen more to to uh, to what's underneath, because we all have it. We all have our a psychic ability. We all have memories. We all have love. We're all built out of the same thing. It's just that some people don't go the extra mile. Some people live on the surface. Some people do the least amount they need
Hmm.
to do in order to survive. And they don't want to go any deeper. When if they did, not in a negative way. No, don't go deeper in a negative way, because I think all negativity is fear. And I believe that fear is false evidence appearing real. So it's all the ego. It's all that imbalanced ego that becomes negativity. And what's really the truth is good news. It's it's positivity. It's I believe our spirit all is ruled by something so beautiful and so loving and so nurturing and so um, passionate and fulfilling. It's all the good words. Before there was this experiment done, and I love to talk about in this book. I can't even tell you who did it, but this guy took all of these little cups of water. You've probably heard this before, and he labeled each bit of water with intention. So some of the cups would have, hatred, control, you know, fear, any kind of words like that. And then the other one would be words like love and kindness, nurturing, all those, generosity, right? He put them in the freezer, and he took them out and studied each of them with a microscope and took pictures. And the ones that were labeled with the negative intentions were all broken. You know how they form those little snowflakes, those little ice flakes. And all of those ice flakes, the snowflakes, were all broken, you know, whereas the snowflakes on the positive intentioned ones were perfect. And it just says so much. And if I could tell anybody of any walk of life, just trust in the positive. Don't let yourself be pulled down by the negative. Don't get entangled in all of that. I think of it with politics as well. There's so many times I get on my soapbox about something like, "Hey, how dare they?" And then I notice that I'm getting all involved in it, and I get really negative, and then I start, and it takes me away from myself, and I start becoming, like more like combative with my friends who don't believe what I believe, and I realize it's all that negativity just entangles you into all this. So we just need to, when we focus on, okay, I have coined a phrase. I will tell you, everybody, right now. It is the bridge to joy is gratitude. So when we get in those places, those really, really low places of feeling defeated and not knowing where to go anymore and just helpless, um, we have to find our joy again. We have to find our joy, but we have to work at it. But it's easy. All you have to do is just start to count your blessings, to start to think of everything you're grateful for, even if you have two things to be grateful for. But just keep trying to find even the littlest things, like, oh, I'm so grateful for this table. It's supporting my computer. When just find all this, and it will start to spread, and then all of a sudden it will lift you up, and you'll be like, oh. But the negativity does the same thing. You start thinking about something negative, and then that goes into something else and something else. And funny, and suddenly you're like, oh my God, what's the point of living? Everything's awful. And it goes both ways. I think of this when I get into fights with my husband. When you get in a fight, suddenly you're like, oh my God, you're awful. You're the worst person ever. Yeah, I remember 2 years ago you said this, and 2 years ago you said that. And so you start concentrating and focusing on all the negative things. And suddenly it's like, oh my God, you're evil. And I say this because this is what everybody in a relationship has to deal with, probably in a marriage. It's like, oh
Oh
my
yeah.
God, you're the worst person ever. How can I be with you? Oh, and it's because we just keep focusing on the negative, and all we can see is just what a monster they are. And then you have to like back up. You're like, oh, you start seeing all the good things about them. And yes, work needs to be done, but it really is. That's how the psyche works. You can go negative or you can go positive, and it all depends on what we feed it. So if we feed it all these negative thoughts, then we're going to just end up there. If we feed it all these positive thoughts, we're going to have this joy and bliss, and we're going to, oh my gosh, what a beautiful sunset. Oh my God, did you see that bird? And you live in the world of the miraculous. Wow. You start to live in this wonderful, eye-opening place. And of course, the negative person will say, Pollyanna, what do they know? But they're living in a terrible place, and they're very unhappy, and the confusion that we have so much of the time is that somehow somebody who's um what's the word I'm looking for? God, I'm not thinking of it. Cynical. There we
Yeah.
go. We confuse cynicism with intelligence, and they are not connected. Very, very important. Cynicism does not equal intelligence. It's actually quite the opposite, because cynicism is actually closes the mind. It makes it full of judgment, and it closes it, and it concentrates on the negative, and you're completely blocking out a total other perception. So for somebody to think I'm a realist, I'm a cynic, well, that's their own. Sorry, honey, I'll be done in a second. Okay. Um, that's their own. Um, they're creating their own reality, basically, and it is their reality. That's their reality, but it's not everybody else's reality. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Rachel, I have to say, you are such a seeker, and it's encouraging to me that you have such a heart that wants to think about these things, because I think, like you said, in our world, there are kind of two extremes. You can be very, very positive where you don't even accept the hard, right? Or you can be super, super negative and don't accept anything that's good. And it's so important that you do look for the spiritual, that you do seek out what is true, because you're right, that is what the meat of life is. And I think it's so amazing that you're open to talk about it, because I think a lot of people, obviously, it's a place where there's a lot of judgment one way or the other, and so it's hard to be vulnerable about it because you don't know what other people will think. But I really do appreciate and love that you have this heart to know, and I think it's a very rewarding thing. Um, and I'm so glad that you shared it, and it was fascinating to listen to you and to see where you're going and what you think. And it makes so much sense to me now how much more you think about your characters, because you think so deeply about the world. And so it would make sense that when it comes to your characters, you're like, all these people have stories and I must find them and portray them well.
I had this years ago. I had a this epiphany. It was like only a few years ago. It was like 4 years ago. I was like, I need to understand the mechanics of the universe. Why did we not know the mechanics of the universe? Why do we not know this? And I'm like, I'm going to find out the mechanics of the universe. But what you find is that I I don't know that anybody can really judge me in that. I kind of believe I put value in science, and I also put value in spirituality. I am not religious. I don't I don't want to categorize myself. That's just not me. But other people, religion has worked for them. But I also know that there are people. You could have a congregation of people in whatever religion, and some of them could be really, really get it. Some of them can really, really get it, and then other people are just using it for their own ego. So it's in everything. It's in everything. It's in acting. It's in every walk of life. But I think the point is to see it like, oh, it's everywhere. It's all these different worlds that we live in are very, very similar. Um, they're all mirrors for each other. We are all mirrors for each other. Um, so I will find it endlessly fascinating. But if I can impart any wisdom to people out there, especially people who sometimes get lost and um, don't know what to do, there's always hope. And I'm here to tell you that cynicism and negativity is not the real world. It's quite the opposite.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much. And thank you for your acting. And I do hope that this Camelot becomes reality. I'd love to see it.
I would too. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I hope you have a lovely day.
You too. Bye, Rachel.
Bye bye. Take care.